Well, hello people. This is Christian Herrera. Uh, I haven't made a video for a while, and that's because I've been extremely busy. I've been working double shifts and stuff like that. But now I do have the time to make a video, and I have a lot of subjects I really want to discuss. Sweden has been a mess, really. The prime minister is leaving, and we have the next year's. They want to put some kind of vaccine mandates in the country. There's a lot of stuff going on, but today I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about why I use Linux as my operating system, and why I choose to do that, and the history behind it. Well, to start with, when I was young, I was about in my early 20s or my late teens, I don't really remember. I was studying in something that's called Cambux. It's kind of a way that you can read up your grades if you didn't do well in high school and in the primary school. If you like me, was a strict mess. So I was studying mathematics and some other subjects, Swedish, history, just things I needed to get into the university. And we were doing a test, and this test we were doing them in a computer, on the computers. And I finished my test early, and then I went and I saw this computer that wasn't working right. It wasn't booting. It was just a Windows computer, but it was in DOS. So I sat down, started rebooting it, and I started checking where do they boot from. I was checking all the INI files. I was checking how did it start and why didn't it boot. So I just got more and more involved, and I got into the network, and I got everything. And all of a sudden, I feel a hand on my shoulder, and this guy asked me, "What you doing?" I said, "No, there's a problem with this computer. It's not booting. I'm just checking out why. I'm just curious." And this guy was like, "Yeah, but you know that what you're doing right now is really illegal, and I won't report you, but this is my network. I'm sure you can handle this, but it's my job to fix this." Yeah, okay. So we didn't speak anything more, but yeah, but that was that incident. And a few days later, this guy, the same guy, comes running to me in the hallway and say, "Hey, kid, wait." And I said, "What?" And he gave me a Red Hat Linux CD, and he gave it to me. He said, "You go home, install this, and teach yourself stuff, because kids like you shouldn't be using Windows or DOS or something similar. You kids like you should be using this kind of operating systems." So that was my introduction to Linux. I tried Red Hat out, and I used it for a few weeks, but then I found Slackware, and I just started to use Slackware all along. And when I first started to get to the graphical interface, I started to learn how to use Slackware, and I started to use GIMP for image manipulation. I said to myself, because I was not a great gamer, so I said to myself, you know what? Everyone I know is using pirated Windows, and this was in the days of Windows 97 or 98, something like that. And I said to myself, everyone I know is using pirated Adobe Suite, pirated Windows, pirated software, because software is expensive in those days. And I decided to do the morally right thing and start to use open source software. And since I started to get a hang on Linux, I managed to configure my dial-up modem on the command line, 28.8 bauds. Yeah, those are the times. And I managed to configure everything, and I started to use this open source software. So I mean, why not? I can do image manipulation with GIMP. I can surf the internet. I can do what I need to do. So I started to use Linux, and that was the thing. That was the biggest reason, was because I didn't want to use pirated software, and I had the open source alternatives, and I really taught myself a lot about operating systems and how computers work. But that was those days. So if we fast forward until now, actually, what made me do this video was that yesterday I was helping a friend and colleague of mine to access my NAS through SSH. So I need to split a folder with him, and stuff. And he was using a Macintosh, and in order to do this on the Macintosh, I had to download third-party software to just get the Fuse to work and the SSHFS. And after I got it working, and this Macintosh was not working well, so first I needed to fix this Macintosh. And I'm not too fond of the graphical interface. I really don't like to be encapsulated in a mouse-driven interface. So the first thing I do when I get to a Mac, I just open the terminal and I work from there. I do everything from the terminal. It's easier that way. So after I fixed his computer so it's working, and I got I made a shell script to mount the disks and stuff. Then the Finder was making problems, and I could copy files through the command line, but when I was doing it through the graphical interface, it started messing with us and wanted the passwords and stuff. So I said nah. And I mean, even if a Macintosh is a pure Unix, I'm not really fond of the graphical interface and the clicking stuff and that things. It makes me ineffective, really. And if we talk about Windows, I don't even want to talk about it. You mean you need to install third-party software from everywhere. You go to these strange websites where you just download stuff. You don't know if you get viruses or not. So I think some of the main benefits and why I stay in Linux is that I really have the freedom to create my own working environment. I have been changing between Plasma and i3 for many years. Plasma I've been using more for office stuff when I just need an office environment. But when I start to power use my computer and use it like I like with consoles and stuff, I tend to use i3. And also when I need to travel with a commuter train or with the bus or something, I mean, to go mouseless is fantastic. You have more control of the computer, and the mouse is not jumping around. So yeah, it's just easier to have everything keyboard driven. So I think one of the main benefits with using Linux is that you can set up your own working environment. And the mouseless stuff is also nice. You don't get the mouse arm. And there's something to be said about using the command line. I know that many users are afraid of the command line. And I may do a video about that in the future, about how to use the command line effectively. But if you think about it, the command line, you have most, I don't remember the English name for that, but most most flags that you use with the commands. The most flags are the same. The capital R of more R versus the R normally is recursive. Small v is usually verbose if you want a lot of output. So the flags tend to be the same on the different command lines. So when you're using the command line, you actually don't need to remember all the flags as many people do think that you need to do. It's just the flags tend to be the same between the different commands. So that's good, and that makes it so much easier. And because when I'm using a graphical environment, I need to catch, and I remember, oh yeah, I want to do this action, and I have to go up, check the menu, I have to scroll through 20 different menu items until I find what I need. Instead of, recursive, R, it's right there. I want to list something, -L, that's perfect. So the flags tend to be the same, and that makes you so much more effective when you use the command line. And another great benefit that I've been seeing a lot since my whole life, I've been fixing my sister's computers, my family's computers, my brother's computer, friends' computers, and it's that when I'm using Linux, I can spend my time using the computer, not fixing the computer. I mean, as I use Arch Linux, okay, the initial setup can be kind of tedious, but as I do now, I mean, I have backups of everything. I back up all my configurations to the NAS, and I actually have a command that I use that can, spit out all the software I have installed. I just use that list and put it into Pacman, and it installs everything that I need. So I don't think the installation the process is too heavy for me right now, since I have all my configuration stored. So the initial system, it's kind of a hassle if you're not using like Manjaro or something that's more beginner friendly. But just setting up the system can be tedious. But when you have it set up, you can spend all your time doing stuff, not fixing the computer. Which brings me to the package manager, and this is something that I'm a little afraid of the trend I'm seeing now with flat packs and I don't know what they call this different package manager. I mean, you have a package manager in your system because that's a good way to have one single database with all the software that is installed. And even if you do a manual install, I tend to do a package. When I was using Debian, I did a deb package before I installed. Now I'm using the AUR. Using Arch Linux is perfect because you have the AUR. Almost every software I need is in the AUR, and it's easy to do a package. So that's another thing. Using flat packs or these kinds of packs, it just takes you away from using the plain package manager. And that's another thing with Arch Linux. Most of the Vim plugins, they have a package for it in the AUR. I don't need to use the package manager inside of Vim to install plugins. And I tend to keep it vanilla. So that's another thing. And when we're talking about this, many people are afraid about gaming in Linux, Photoshop, Office tools. But before I touch that, I want to talk about compatibility and what I think about using operating systems. In my world, I don't care what you're using. You can use a toaster with the Debian installed or with the Windows installed. I don't care what you're running. I don't care. What I care is that all the operating systems follows the protocols, because the inter-system communication should be maintained. So if everybody using standard protocols for communication, then I don't really care what they're doing behind the system or what they're doing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter, as long as the communication and the way to open software and open programs is maintained. So for me, I mean, I think for an average user, most people won't even know the difference if they're using Linux or using something else. If you have a Linux with KDE installed, for Windows use, it would be the same. You have LibreOffice, you can use Google Docs if you're into that. So for a normal user, it's not a problem. You can surf the web And that's what people tend to do. But when it comes to gaming, Linux did have a bad reputation for gaming. And I can say this. I've been using Linux since early 20s, late 90s, mid or late 90s. I think it was mid 90s. I started to use Linux. And I've been gaming for many years. For many years I was configuring Wine, doing Wine configurations to get stuff to work. I was playing good games. I was playing GTA. I was playing GTA San Andreas, Need for Speed, Command and Conquer. I was playing all of those games on Linux using Wine. And it was a bit of a hassle to get stuff working, but when you got used to it, when you get stuff, I was playing Morrowind, I was playing Daggerfall, I was playing Oblivion. I've been playing Skyrim before the easy stuff that's now have come. But now you have Steam for Linux, and Steam has a Proton, that's a compatibility layer that you can use. So most Steam games actually working very fine in Linux, and even better than in Windows, because you don't have to waste your resources on the operating system, and the file systems tend to be faster than the NTFS. When depending on your file system. But so I don't think gaming is an issue as for now. The problem would be, I think, for gamers that are playing online, because the cheat systems doesn't allow Linux. But I hope that's getting fixed. I do play Regnum Online, or I think they changed the name, Realms of Regnum. It's an Argentinian game from the beginning. I might do a video on that someday. I've been playing that for many years, but now I haven't been gaming for many years. I just came back to use my old characters. So I'm not in a clan or anything. It's like I picked up my characters that have been sleeping for 6 years or something. So that's kind of fun. Yeah, but gaming in Linux today is not an issue. It's not a big issue. So most things is working. And if we talk about working, programming in Linux is so much easier. I tend to use Vim for my text editing, and that's because I used to be a systems administrator, and when you're SSHing to different systems, I have to look at configuration files. VI was a better option than Emacs, because Emacs was so big. Emacs is almost an operating system itself. I bet it's a great programming editor. I mean, most programmers I did know in those times loved Emacs, but I used Vim because it was smaller, and it was more reminding of VI. And as a system administrator, I did SSH into many systems and fix stuff with VI, fix the configuration files. But as far as coding and networking and all that kind of task, Linux is superior. And but we have this compatibility, like for professional use, web developers. I mean, if you don't have access to the Creative Suite, and a lot of people that used to be Linux users that have been working with web, I know they've been using Mac now, because they still want the Unixy system behind, but they want to have access to Creative Suite. But I've been trying out the Mac. I don't like it. I can't choose my working environment, and the Finder is horrible. It's horrendous for me. So I don't like it. So I will stick to Linux. I use GIMP for image manipulation. I use Inkscape for vector graphics. Inkscape is a great program. So they are open source alternatives, really. And as for Office tools, yeah, I haven't been using Microsoft Office for many years, so I don't know about that. I think it's online now, it runs in the browser. And you have Yeah, you have the Office for Google Docs and Google Office. I mean, everything is online. You have LibreOffice, which I use, and you have other alternatives. But I am not using Office suites anymore. When I do my documenting, when I was in the KTH, the Royal Institute of Science and Technology, I learned to write all my documentation in LaTeX. And LaTeX taught me how to spend my energy and time on the logical structure of the document instead of as many people that using graphical editors that they tend, oh, no, I have to increase the size there, I have to increase. I mean, I don't want to spend my mind on that. So LaTeX has been great for me. But now I'm starting to use Markdown. And Markdown is great because you can do most of the things you need to do in a document, you can do it in Markdown. And with Markdown and Pandoc, I mean, I can write the whole document in Markdown. And if I need to send it to someone, I can use Pandoc to convert it into a docx or something and send it to them. But all the headers are correctly set. And that's great. So, and the text files are smaller. And for instance, if I need to, let's make an example. Let's say I want to go to my Vim wiki. I just want to open it in C files. So let's for instance say that, I mean, here I have one wiki for my company, one private. So let's go to private one. When I start browsing the files, I can see what's in them. Like that, if you check to behind my picture there. So I can see what's in the files. It's much faster and easier to search, and I can use grep, I can use find, I can use those commands on the text lines and make changes in the whole document tree with just one command. If I need to just change a word or something. That's perfect. So I think more people should be taught how to use text-based documenting systems and to use the terminal again, because that's something that's getting harder. And when I work with people that are using binary files for documentations, it actually slows me down a lot because I can't process them in the same way. I need to open the files. I need to. It's a mess. It's a mess for me, since I'm used to working this way. Well, this was this video for today. I just wanted to rant a little because I was so frustrated from yesterday working with Macintosh and Windows all day long. I was just tired and exhausted. I want to ask you a favor. If you like this kind of content, or if you like one more tutorial kind of content or whatever, please leave a comment. Tell me what you want, what you like. Tell me what you want to hear about. I do spend a lot of time researching also. So if I do a video or a video type that you're requesting, please leave a like and consider subscribing, because that would help me out, because I do spend a lot of time researching, and I do these videos for fun, but it's also nice to have feedback that people like what you're doing. Well, I won't bore you anymore. I know I need to start working, so I wish every one of you a very fine day in these dark times, and goodbye.